Let's give people some time to shuffle in here, folks. I did a last-minute switcheroo, and I did it on purpose. So let's give people a couple of minutes, cue the music. I got to reload a bunch of different assets and stuff because, I honestly thought we were beyond some of this. But, sometimes it's just a matter of having to repeat yourself because that's just the nature of it. That's the nature of this business in order to get things through the minds of everyone. There are people who are constantly watching and constantly learning, and then there are people who are, periodically paying attention, and then there are people who aren't at all. So it's very, very important that we share this message as much as possible, because there are unfortunately a lot of people out there who say incorrect things. I really wanted to talk some about the Russia stuff, which is just mind-blowing to me. I'm reading it as on the side, and I'm reading some of these documents that are coming out. And by the way, the Federalist has an entire database going up. If you guys don't know about that, the Federalist is putting up an entire database of those documents and others, by the way. And it's just remarkable to go through it. One which took me back considerably, and I thought that we would talk about that a little bit, but unfortunately, I don't think we are going to have time. I think we're going to have to backtrack a little bit and discuss some of the things that we discussed already. And that's fine. But here we are doing that. And then I also did want to discuss the potential that Democrats take the Senate? Like, are people being worried for nothing? And I think there's a few things, as usual, that some people don't know and don't understand. So let's cue the music, let it rock a little bit. I do see some people are changing pace now, and they're starting to realize it and starting to join. I also reshare different links completely late, so give them some time and we'll be there. And we're going to talk about today how the Democratic Party defied history in 2022, because it tells us a lot about 2026 and what we may and may not be able to expect. All right, what does it mean? And there's a few things that are just so big and so glaring that people are absolutely overlooking, and that is unfortunate for both parties, because you would think that they would want to know about their coalitions and what it means going forward, but never, because obviously you want to do what is right for your coalition, and you want to get out as you want to have the biggest impact you can in campaigning. Otherwise, is there just a whole lot of money being spent, donor money being spent for absolutely nothing? Well, I got to tell you, folks, I think that honestly, that's starting to become, the norm. All right, not because it's always been around, but it's becoming the norm. Let's cue the music, and we'll be back in a bit. All right, folks, welcome to Inside the Numbers with the People's Pundit. I'm your host, Rich Barris, the People's Pundit. Don't forget, if you like the videos, to like them and share them far and wide. All right, let me get this thing out of here. I don't know why I keep this thing here. I'm a mover. I'm a shaker. I don't like standing in one position. I like to move around a little bit. Always did. Motion creates emotion, folks. Motion creates emotion. All right, there's a couple of things that have been out today. I got this house map up. We're probably going to go through it before, obviously, we show the house map. So let me get rid of that for a hot second here. And we're gonna go through like the digestion of the day, and then what some people. Actually, I'm not gonna even bother showing some of the comments, but because I think we all know some of what we hear on a daily basis, and they're almost always wrong. All right, and the problem is people are always looking for information that they can say, "Oh, see this." This either affirms what I believe, all right, what I personally believe, or it makes my point. It proves me right, in some twisted way. And look, that's human nature. But the fact of the matter is it might not advance the conversation. In 2022, and I'm going to show something. Oh my God, my critics are gonna have a heart attack for a second. So bear with me. In 2022. Those of us who polled the election fairly correctly, there were some big misses in 22, but this was our final generic ballot, all right, which was on the money, like spot on. People are like, oh, you got 22 wrong. No, I didn't. You weren't listening, all right? And a Walker +1 in Georgia is not wrong when Warnock wins by less than 0.2 or something like that. That is pretty darn close. But the generic ballot was really informative because it told us a few things that led people to believe certain things, especially part of the Republican Party that is anti-Trump. They thought this would be good for them, and they thought this would be an affirmation of what the direction they believed the Republican Party should go. And their general thesis of the case was Joe Biden is really unpopular. That unpopularity is going to sink him. And midterm performance, as we all know, is tied to presidential approval. As you guys know, that has been true for basically all of the time that I've been in this business, except in between some lifetimes have been periods of realignment. And during those periods of realignments, rules get broken. And I think that some people are not understanding how this current realignment threatens to break some rules. And they didn't. Now, that's not the only reason Democrats were able to defy history in 22. Bear with me because there are several. One right now is the realignment. The second one, and I'll go into more detail about the realignment. The second one that is really, really important was a ground game that helped that realignment. All right. And I would actually call that 1A because I actually don't think Democrats had this remarkably, sophisticated ground game, the remnants of COVID. Some of that was there. And yes, there were some procedures and rules and laws that were changed between the midterms leading up to the general presidential election in certain states that did have a significant impact. And by significant impact, I mean it limited Democrats' ability to cheat with unsolicited mail-in ballots. All right, we're not effing around on this show, and we're saying it how it is. They cheat, and they cheat by sending out unsolicited mail-in ballots. Why in state, and by the way, not having election day deadlines for those ballots to be accounted for and then not counted if they missed the deadline. Like in a state like Florida, for instance, where there are no unsolicited mail-in ballots, you must request your mail-in ballot. Just because you're on the voter record does not mean they will automatically send out that ballot, all right? And I'm not saying the cheating led to this, but it's just some partisan politics. Like, there's always some small amount. Republicans would have lost regardless. 2020, different story. But in 22, Republicans would have lost regardless because of this realignment. What I'm saying is, though, there was some remnants of easy to do mail-in balloting that did help Democrats take advantage of the realignment and why it benefits them. And I'll get to that in a second. Another part, which I all warned you about and nobody listened, was that Republican leadership sabotaged their own candidates because they believed these data points that you're looking at right now would lead to such a large wave that they didn't need John Gibbs okay, that they didn't need J.R. Majewski, that they were going to win districts in Rhode Island and Connecticut and Virginia 7 and down the line and all down the line. That did not happen. And the reason it didn't happen is so damn important that nobody is listening to. Traditional historical markers did not help them. Right track, wrong track being the worst it's ever been for an incumbent party's midterm. Biden at a historically low approval rating. It did not help the Republican Party because of the realignment and because of these internal saboteurs. All right. So we could chalk that up to a second reason, and we'll just call that reason bad candidates, because it's not the only sabotage of what the media labeled as bad MAGA candidates is not the only sum total of the bad candidates that they had in 2022. They had a lot of really bad traditional or rhino Republican candidates that they thought were going to go on and win these districts. And that did not happen. And then the third reason is the districts themselves. This is what a lot of people are not understanding. Democrats outmaneuvered Republicans in the post-2020 census redistricting effort because Democrats had people who know this process, know the numbers, understand how this works, and they forced the so-called independent commissions, which are chocked and packed with their own people in various states, and they outmaneuvered Republicans who picked idiots who don't know how districting works at all, because in the Republican Party, it is much more about who your friends are and whose pockets can you stuff than it is about the cause. And that's the reality. That's just the truth. Everybody knows it who's in this game. Chris Christie, for instance, knows nothing about how congressional redistricting is done. And then, some of that was out of their hands. North Carolina, for instance, in this state where I'm standing right now, Democrats got played, but they had a backup plan. And by that, I mean Roy Cooper, who's now running for Senate and is a threat. Roy Cooper decided that he was going to try to use the budget process in North Carolina to get expanded Medicaid for Obamacare, under Obamacare, by the way, but also as a way to box Republicans in the corner and agree to a map that was more favorable to Democrats. Republicans fight in this state when they want to fight. A lot like I'm not going to give credit to other states right now. There's a lot of problems in Florida, a lot of problems. And, there are no blue states where the party is filled with traitors who work with the other party to screw their own voters like that. There is no example of that nationwide, but there are examples everywhere when it comes to the Republican Party and their legislatures that are dominated by red congressmen and women who then, or state legislators, who then screw over their own voters because they're full of shit and they're not at all conservative. But in North Carolina, at that point, they held their ground and they called Roy Cooper's bluff. And they managed to box him in such a bad corner where it became, man, we have no chance to win this Senate seat, which they thought they could win with Beasley. If you keep this up, Governor, we are going to get wiped out in the state houses, in the Supreme Court. By the way, they did. But he kept it up too long, and the generic ballot statewide went sideways on them for too long, and they couldn't get it back. So he went and, he cornered himself and eventually had to agree to a map because Republicans said, oh, yeah. We're ready to pass that budget now with this map now, too, like you wanted. And they got him. However, because those elections for the state Supreme Court were not held yet, it was still liberal dominated. And they've been thrown since they've been thrown off the court. And the state Supreme Court threw out the map, which was a map everyone in the state, this is perfect toward what we're talking about. Everybody in the state knows. Nobody even disputes it. Everybody knows and understands it. Undercounted red Eastern North Carolina. All right. So redistricting was the third main reason. And people don't seem to understand that. So it leads to stupid takes like this, which then people on the right go and quote tweet because they think it serves their own purpose. And I've been hearing it for weeks. This is just the latest, but I've been hearing stuff like this for weeks, when in truth, I'm going to say something that's blasphemy right now. Donald Trump's approval will not alone dictate control of the House of Representatives. But presidential approval is the most predictive indicator. It was the most predictive indicator. And we have seen this in periods of realignment before. By the way, Roosevelt made this same mistake. All right, let's play this. And then when we come back, we'll talk about why he's usually right. But in this case, he's wrong. And if Republicans don't know he's wrong, they're going to get wiped.
Say this is an abject disaster. Abject disaster for the President of the United States. You mentioned it, Jessica. Look, voters on Trump and inflation. He won the 2024 election because he was more interested on inflation than Kamala Harris was, led by a margin of 9 points. Look at where his net approval stands today, though, on inflation. My goodness gracious. Into the gutter we go, underwater we go. He's 25 points underwater. My goodness gracious. That is where the Little Mermaid is, and he is matching the Little Mermaid. That's how far underwater he is on the issue that got him elected. He led on by 9 points on it last year, and now he's 25 points underwater. As I said, this is a complete and total disaster for the President of the United States.
So let's look ahead to 2026 when a lot of all the House Republicans, some senators going to be on the ballot.
Okay, actually, before we do that, and my bad here, Harry, I'm going to park you for a second here. Before we do that, we could easily find other data points, cherry pick. We can go and cherry pick other data points to make our point. All right, a reverse point. Let's play devil's advocate here. But Harry, the Democratic Party is the most unpopular it's ever been. And no party has won control of the House of Representatives with such bad numbers. What I just said is a true statement. That's a true statement. And we could do that. And we can go back and forth and play this little cherry pick game. Or we could just recognize that probably something else is going on. And that's not the sum total of what will control the House of Representatives. We could also play this game. Hold on one second. Copy the image so I don't have to go take it down. We could play this game, guys. And we can say what Matt Bevin pointed out today. All right. And I like Matt. So, we'll say, why won't it let me paste this? Or Tom Bevin. Sorry, Tom. We can do this. Okay. And we can say, go ahead, load up. Yeah, 100%. Tom is right that Donald Trump is more popular than Bush or Obama during their second terms when it comes to approval rating. And we can, say that they lost their second midterms because they got wiped out. And we could say that that was the case because of the president's approval ratings. And as we all know, presidential approval rating is the most predictive indicator for House performance, especially during first-term incumbent midterms. However, that simply was not true in 2022. None of that saved or helped Republicans. That's not what saved the Democratic Party from getting wiped out up and down the ballot. In fact, you could argue that it tricked Republicans into thinking that they were going to do better. Let's go back to Harry here.
How is that shaping?
Yeah, if Republicans in Congress think that they can escape the wrath of the voters when it comes to inflation, I have a bit of a rude awakening for them. Trust which party more in inflation? You go back to the 2022 midterms, look at this. Republicans led by 13 points on which party was more trusted in inflation. Look at where we are now, nearly a 15-point shift in the...
Okay, stop. What's the problem with his argument? Before everybody goes and quote tweets it and cites it. All we need is inflation to get better. And once inflation gets better, we're going to be fine. Really? How'd that work out in 22? Right. That isn't going to save you if you're a Republican. That's not going to save you. In fact, there has been a lot of achievements for Donald Trump in the areas of inflation. We are not back to where we were before Joe Biden and the damage that Joe Biden did. But we have made a lot of progress. The problem is that the voter isn't giving Donald Trump credit for that progress. That's the problem. And that's a messaging and priority issue. That's not a data issue. Long sustained benefits to the economy, of course, will have some degree of impact in voter sentiment and whether or not they give Donald Trump and Republicans overall credit for that sustained improvement. But one, you don't know that that's going to come, especially if there are sanctions leveled on oil, Russian oil. Because gas, guys, if you forgot, gas skyrocketed when Joe Biden waged a proxy war against Joe Biden, against Vladimir Putin. A war now, by the way, that we've lost. And Donald Trump is doing his best to negotiate an end to, or at least what I think is his best. I think he could just do it. He could wait. He could tell everybody to sit down and shut the fuck up and it would be over. He promised the war would be over in 24 hours. That is what his campaign promise was made on Truth Social. That has not been the case. But I do think unfairly he's not getting credit. But fair, unfair, boo-hoo, that's the world we live in. You're, as a Republican, supposed to understand the world we live in, and your decision-making and your priorities and definitely your messaging has got to reflect that you understand that that is the world we live in. It's an unfair world, and you have to go to extremes, basically. And you have to make sure that you're constantly on your toes and not being distracted. Right now, the voters think that Republicans, and you can't blame them, listen to Mike Johnson. Listen to, and they give him a platform for it. It's amazing. Listen to Randy Fine. Listen to all of these people who are on TV and on the podcast circuit all day, every day. What are they talking about? Yes, you got the Mark Levin crowd out there who spends more time attacking Marjorie Taylor Greene than he does attacking Democrats. The voters feel, and they won't give credit for whatever gains we've made in the economy and inflation, the voters feel that Republicans are too focused on other things. And they have been since specifically the Iran bombing. But even before that, you guys know, if you watch this show, that we went over the Public Polling Project results and we were sending up flares before the bombing of Iran. That voters weren't feeling like, or it's not just a message, Republicans were focused on the things that they said they would do when they got in office, that there was too much other crap that they were being distracted by, right? And somebody actually just texted me, and they're right. I mean, the bottom line is this kind of a bit of an example of don't write a check that you can't cash, right? And there were some checks that were written, and honestly, even if they come through and cash those checks, is it 24 hours? Has it been 24 hours? Like, you don't say things like that, right? That is an unforced error. And of course, we all know about the stuff with Epstein. We don't have to roll into that. Unforced error after unforced error after unforced error. And a lack of a refusal to acknowledge that there's a huge part of the MAGA base that just doesn't want to be bothered with the Middle East at all. And that includes Israel. And in fact, we just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24 slides yesterday on what are the odds to demonstrate that point. Oh, I'm sorry. One's again, -1. One was about Ukraine, the Ukraine war, which never was as popular with voters as Gallup had it. So Gallup's trend is exacerbated, but it's correct nevertheless. So, all of those slides, and yet there were still comments that we received during and after the show that like somehow this was our opinion and that we were all just wrong. Some people can't be helped. You can show them data for days. We spent it was like an hour and 26 minutes of data before we got the first, oh, you guys are just wrong. What are you talking about? 80 years of data we showed yesterday. And yet there are still some people who refuse to accept it. It's a big part of it. And again, I really do want to get into a deeper show about why that is among certain generations and why it is among the younger folks that they can't understand that. And that would be a rather controversial, but I think helpful show to help both sides understand each other and their point of views. All right, but let's continue, because obviously my point being, the greater point when I stop this clip is that obviously Harry is wrong, because if that was the sum total of who wins and loses elections, then the Republican Party should have walked away in 2022 with the Senate and a much, much stronger position in the U.S. House. Because in truth, the poll results I showed you before, which I can't overlap with Harry over here, the poll results, we were right. Just to give, because I'm going to show you the actual voting numbers in a second. But 4-year college degree, we couldn't believe it, but we actually had Republicans 5 points away. I mean, this is like crazy. Advanced postgrad, we had Democrats leading by just 54 to 41. And everybody at the time, by the way, was like, no way, they're doing so well. And of course, their usual large advantage with those who have a high school degree or less, and then some college or an associate. And it did, in fact, translate into a popular vote win. We did project almost to the T, by the way. We were 4.1, something like that. I'd have to go back and make sure. It was overall, if you round, it was a 5-point lead, but it without rounding, which I wish polling aggregators would not round. I wish they would not round. And I wish all pollsters would give their results based on how election results are in fact calculated, right? So Robert Cahaley and I were just talking about that the other day, because it gives like somebody like Scott Rasmussen will say, it gives a false impression of certainty, and that's why you shouldn't do it. And that's the standard that the industry has been living by for years. But somebody like Robert Cahaley and somebody like myself would argue it gives a false sense of strength or weakness in somebody's lead when you round. So you could round up to a 5-point advantage if you report it like that, and it could look like Republicans have a bigger lead on the generic ballot than they actually do when they only win by, like, for instance, 3.6, right? Or something like that. And that's exactly what happened in 2022. I mean, if you look at the vote shares for the party, we were decimal points away for each, but it gave a false impression. But it doesn't matter. The bottom line is, had the districts not looked, let's forget about how the vote ended up the way it did. If that vote would have ended up the same way, but the districts were redrawn to reflect, for instance, something more like the map in 2020 or even 18, obviously same map, but something more, let's say Democrats had a point and it was jerried too much to Republicans before we redrew this map the way it is now. Somewhere in the middle, for instance, right? We still would have saw Republicans perform more on par with what they have done in the past with like a 3 to 5 point national House vote lead. But that did not happen. In the past, a 3 to 5 could have been, 30 seats. It could have been 30 seats. But in this case, it wasn't. It ended up in a terrible underperformance. And that's the map that we are dealing with now, which I don't think people understand. You need keys or something? And I love you. That's the map we are dealing with now. And we're not dealing with an environment that's a presidential environment, because most common thing people will say to me when I try to explain this is, but Rich, we had that same map in the presidential election. Right, we did. And Republicans underperformed it even with Donald Trump still on the ballot. He's not on the ballot this time. We will not get a presidential coalition this time. And in order for Republicans to buck history the way that Democrats bucked history in 22, they must do something exceptional and leverage the realignment the way that Democrats leveraged the realignment in 22. Now, here's the reality. It was easier for Democrats to leverage the realignment in 22. Why? Because their voters are higher propensity voters. They can afford to win those voters by smaller margins if those voters still come out disproportionately higher than the other coalition's vote. And in fact, that is what happened in 22. It is. And we've gone over this before, and it's really frustrating that I constantly have to repeat myself. But if it's for the benefit of you guys, I'm sorry if you guys, my normal listeners and my normal followers, I'm sorry that I got to constantly do this. But for other people, for the benefit of other people, bear with me. All right. So I know if you're like, God, Rich, we've been over this before. We have. But yet there are still Mark Halperin's out there not understand, or maybe he doesn't understand, but he's being pulled into the narrative. And I don't mean to single him. He's not alone. There's many other people. That says nothing about the people who are on social media taking what they hear from the podcast circuit and from cable news, and right, like Harry Enton, and then running with it and spreading more bull crap. It's too simple of a way to look at it. We don't live in the politically neutral space that we lived in 2010, where Barack Obama's 45% approval rating was going to spell doom and disaster for the Democratic Party. And by the way, Republicans should have paid attention back then. The reason that they were able to make such large gains wasn't because of Obama's approval rating being so low it ended. It was because Democrats had such a great election, or rather Republicans had such a bad election the year prior, that Democrats had currently represented seats at that time that they had no business winning anyway. So those were always going to realign a little bit and shift back. It was going to correct. It was a correction election. All right. That's why in 24, another environment we don't live in anymore. That's why in 24, they did do well again, except, of course, they weren't going to win the number of seats that they won, back in 2010. All right. Even though they screwed up some Senate opportunities in 2010, and they made up some of that in 2014. So that's, the Senate was a bit of a different story. All right. And by the way, to some degree, more to the point, to some degree, Donald Trump and his team back then did understand that they had to do something exceptional to defy history in 2018. It didn't help in the House, but it ended up helping considerably in the U.S. Senate. And they went around, and Donald Trump essentially campaigned in every state as if he was running again for the candidates that he wanted to help win in the Senate. And it was a big deal. It had a huge help. Rick Scott certainly benefited, and obviously others. Mike Braun was helped in Indiana. Nobody could help Jim Renacci in Ohio. He was horrible. He was a horrible candidate. Nice guy, but horrible candidate. But again, not a MAGA candidate. So here we have Ohio realigning to the new right, which is really the old right. It's the Republican Party before Bush, the Bushes, right? And the Haleys and all that, right? That's the party it was. Trumpism is the party of the OG Republican Party. And Trump is really just bringing it back. And the Republican establishment that got embedded during the Bush years are doing everything in their power to hold on to it, clawing, kicking, and screaming. All right. So this is a perfect example. And Trump even tried to help Jim. And nobody, Jesus Christ couldn't have helped Jim Renacci, and he went down. So again, let me show you. We were just put up the graph that I use, like an exit poll graph. I try to mimic an exit poll when we release these results like that, guys, so it makes it easy and you guys have an apples to apples comparison. But back to the original point, we were concerned that it was like these educated people who were going to vote better or for Republicans in a more narrow margin for Democrats than they did in the past. But the big problem was that the core base, especially the MAGA base of the Republican Party, doesn't matter. It was the 30-point margin. They were not they were not going to be enough in the electorate. And when you're looking at how congressional districts are, especially post 2020, they underrepresent those working class constituencies. So you need to get them out in even greater numbers to win certain districts. So you could do better all you want with educated voters, but it's not going to be enough. It's not going to be enough because you're not going to win them, folks. You're not going to win them. You'll narrow it to 4-6 points among college degree voters. Hell, maybe you get close to even tying them up. You're still going to get your ass thumped by post-grads who are going to end up in a midterm being 17, maybe 19% of the electorate if these other voters don't show. Other voters, by the way, that we've gone over before a million times. We just did it again on one of the odds yesterday with Barnes. Younger, below the age of 35 especially, but you can back it up and say 40 to 49 group is even a problem during the midterms. Millennials, especially those who are non-college, non-white. And by the way, even younger voters who do have a college degree are getting more Republican. There was no difference between, for instance, black voters with a college degree and black voters without. Yup. Crazy. So that was actually something we talked about a lot with Sean Parnell on Battleground before he went to work for the Defense Department. That was something I constantly said, Sean, just to let your viewers know, something weird here. There's no difference. And there wasn't. It turned out there wasn't a difference, which stunned Democrats. They didn't believe it. They sat there, la, 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 like Republicans are doing now. All right. How did that turn out? We've seen this chart before. Here is the Pew Research post-election voter validated surveys. You can see for 2016, 2020, and 24. Even with Donald Trump on the ballot again, and I'm going to have to back it up to get you 22, you can see that, in fact, high school or less, huge margin, the same margin roughly, only a little bit better than in 2020, certainly even better than in 2016. All right. But if it was up, and I'll get it, I will actually get the other chart so you can see it. You would see that the margin is the same, in roughly the same. Republicans did just about as good as they did with those who have a college degree in 22 and in 24. The difference is that there were more new Trump voters that came out. So if you're Democrats, you can afford to narrow your advantage with this group if this group is more of the electorate than the core constituencies of your opponents. And that's what happened to Republicans in 2022, which I'm going to get right now. Where is that damn thing? Let me put this up. Pew, voting patterns, turnout. I mean, maybe this one. I keep forgetting which one's which. Voting demographics, voting patterns in the 24 elections. No, I think I picked the wrong one, but that's okay. If I did, yeah, I just picked the one that was the same as the other. Where are you? Where are you? Where are you? I know I'm close here. Balls. Demographic profiles, education. Yeah, I'm looking for the 22 one. This is 2020. It's sticking to only presidential elections, and that's fine. But you would see basically that it is the same margin. Maybe slightly better for Trump because Trump has a vote that only votes for him, but slightly better. All right. Not much at all. All right. And Republicans got a monstrous margin with voters who did not have a college degree, but poo-poo to them because they can't turn out these other voters that we are banging their heads against the wall trying to tell you is all that matters. All right. Because they couldn't turn them out. It wasn't enough. And what does it mean? And it means Adam Laxalt loses by a very, very narrow margin. It means Herschel Walker loses by a very, very narrow margin. That and other things mean that Oz loses by 4 points. All right. It's everything. It's everything. Republicans will have problems in states like Michigan this time, regardless, with mind changers, which is a voter who really does not like the Republican Party. They vote for Donald Trump and they have no problems voting for a Democrat. They're all over Macomb County. They are all over Saginaw. They're all over Monroe. They're everywhere in southeastern Michigan. Everywhere. And of course, we know that they're basically Pennsylvania's infested with them. All right. So this is going to be interesting. Maine, big time. All right. And for some people who are talking about the Senate and Maine and this and that, the problem you have is that Susan Collins may peace out on you. All right. That's number one. And if she doesn't, she may follow her friend Lisa Murkowski into being an independent. All right. So everyone's talking about this as if you haven't already lost Alaska. You did lose Alaska. When the midterm elections are over, Lisa Murkowski will stab you in the back and she will become an independent and actually caucus with Democrats. They deny this. They're full of shit. Watch. All right, let's keep
direction. It's within the margin of error, but the Democrats up by a point. This just looks totally different from where we were back in 2022 when, of course, Republicans took back the House. That's what Democrats are trying to do this time around, looking much better for them. The bottom line is the wrath that the voters feel for Donald Trump and inflation is transferring over to House Republicans and now Democrats, although it's a small lead, a big difference from where we were back in October of 2022, with Democrats actually in the positive and Republicans in the negative. Very much the reverse of where we were just 3 years ago.
Yeah.
All right, before she keeps going, I'm just pointing out something. Wrath is not a good word. Well, with some voters, it may be because it's not, again, voters aren't saying that because they think Democrats have better policies. They're saying that because they're mad that Republicans, and Donald Trump, to their mind, are not focused more on them. And if Donald Trump's administration shifted away from being so hyper-focused on the problems of other people and more focused on, and I'm not saying it's fair, I'm saying that's the message the White House gives. And if you're a Trump supporter and one that, just loves everything he's doing, you need to pay attention to other people. You are not enough to win elections and you will lose, right? The other people don't agree with you. It's that simple. They don't see the world the way you see it. And frankly, I hate to tell you, it's your support that you're wrong. You're in the minority. This is what Barnes and I tried to tell you yesterday. You're in the minority. You're wrong. The way you see it is not the way it actually is. He's doing a lot for the domestic economy, but he is not prioritizing it over other things. That's truth. That's fair. It's a fair criticism. All right. When, you have the the prosecutor for the District of Columbia come out and say things like she's going to chase down anti-Semites instead of chasing down people who stole an entire presidency from them. It doesn't matter what she's doing behind the scenes. Like, you think this, you're constantly wanting to believe a 4D chess thesis. Like, it doesn't matter. They don't believe it because they've never seen evidence of that. They've seen evidence of this other thing where they get derailed and they get distracted and they go in a different direction. That's what they have seen in the past. And it doesn't matter if they're doing it in the scenes or not. If that's true, then what is the problem with that being your focus? All right. I mean, the stuff that's coming out with Russiagate is just egregious. It's just egregious. Mike Johnson's wailing at the wall. Guys, give me a break. We just went over this with Israel yesterday. People don't care. Especially young MAGA. They don't care. Whether that's right or not, it's irrelevant. Do you want to win or not? And then if you don't, what's it going to do to your movement? Right. All right, let's I'll give the guy his last. We're at 2:40. No, I won't. Maybe I will, but I just won't now. We have to take a break. All right. Yeah. That's more important at the current moment than Harry. Again, he's just going on and on about Harry is very good at cherry picking his stuff. The fact of the matter is, he really just, if you listened closely, he really just proved his entire argument was not right. If the GOP had a much bigger lead than the Democrats have now on the issue of inflation, then voters believing that Donald Trump fixed the inflation crisis will not be enough. Obviously, it wasn't enough for the GOP alone. And the GOP has the problem of this. This is an added problem. Just because they give Donald Trump credit for something does not mean they're going to give you the credit too. In case you didn't notice, there were a lot of empty spots in the 2024 election next to your congressman and women's last name. A lot of empty bubbles. The country already didn't like the Republican Party as much as they liked Donald Trump. It's not going to just be superimposed automatically, his support to you. That was never going to happen. And you should have been focused on fixing that and remedying that from the very beginning. In fact, since the moment Donald Trump won the 24 election, your biggest concern should have been, damn, why didn't those people vote for Mike Rogers? Damn, why is McCormick going to lose next time he's up for re-election? Because Donald Trump is not going to be there to save him. How the hell do we do so well in Georgia when Donald Trump's on the ballot? How is it that Donald Trump has now won the state of North Carolina 2 times by a margin larger than our favorite senator? On and on and on and on. Arizona, Nevada, the entire Great Lakes region. Why are you eking out wins in northwestern districts, even in Iowa, when Donald Trump is blowing it out of the water? How come you suck rotten eggs in Mark Molinaro's area, but Trump is cracking it, cooking? And it's not like there weren't signs for this. Like, there was already an argument before the 24 election. Little Egg Arbor. Remember, Laura and I even took a trip up to New York just to show you and tell you about the big Trump or bust signs all over that area of New York and northern New Jersey, filled with Sikhs, Hispanics, Black communities. This isn't a debate anymore. What are we still having this debate for? That has always been the situation. You're going to hang on Gallup's approval rating, boy. You're in for a rude awakening. Give me a break. Anywho, again, I mean, you got Chris out there feeding you copium. Sure, the Democratic Party's in the doldrums. Sure. And yet they still have a lead on Republicans in the generic ballot. So what? So what? Democrats understood something that Republicans still have not come to grips with. This is not a persuasion game the way it used to be. This is a motivation game. And you are currently in the deficit. I'm going to say this one more thing before we go to a break. Democrats have a smaller but high prop, meaning more reliable, voting coalition. Republicans have a larger, and in some areas significantly larger, a larger but low prop, far less reliable voting bloc. And Democrats know that, and Republicans don't. We'll take a break. You're watching Inside the Numbers with the People's Pundit. Don't forget to like the videos if you like them. Share them far and wide. All right, let me tell you about our friends over at, of course, 1775 Coffee. The only way that the People's Pundit can even drink coffee anymore. And you're already drinking coffee. But is it doing anything for you other than giving you a caffeine spike? Maybe you like the taste of it too. And that's great, like me. Rejuvenate coffee is different. It is clean, science-backed, infused with CAAKG, which is a powerful compound studied for its ability to support longevity, cellular energy, and metabolism at the deepest level, something I desperately needed. That means sharper mornings, no crash, more focus, and the long-term benefits that your body will thank you for. I drink it because I care about my health, my energy levels, and how I show up for you guys, for my family, right? For the life that I want. And if you're going to drink coffee anyway, make it one that works as hard as you do at building that. Head to 1775coffee.com /TPP for the People's Pundit and try Rejuvenate Coffee now. The link is in the description. 1775coffee.com /TPP. At this point, this is like one of the best slogans for coffee ever. Don't just wake up, rejuvenate. Love that slogan. By the way, let me just show you something real quick. For those who've never seen this before, biological age, before supplement, after supplement. That's not actually the one. This is the one I want to show you. This is I mean, they're all important. It's all important stuff, but I've gone over this maybe once or twice before. The results with Rejuvenate compound with daily use. And I'm telling you, what are you going to buy? A week, 2 weeks supply anyway? I'm telling you, you will feel it within like two weeks. It says 30 days. I mean, for me, I thought it was much earlier, to be honest. And Laura and I are deeply, committed to this idea of like, I gotta personally like something before I even show it to you guys or bring it to you guys. Loved it in concept. Liked it in concept, I should say. Loved it in practice. I don't know, in case you guys haven't noticed, I've gone on this like full now, all out health kick, and I'll eat like a man still. All right, but like you do have to start, especially at my age, you do have to start caring about what you put in your body. And exercise is super, super important, no matter what your goals are for that exercise. And I'm not just putting, acid without a benefit in my stomach anymore. I'm just not doing it for a 10-minute, 20-minute spike in my energy level. Screw that. All right. You'll like it. You'll like it a lot. And if those of you have tried 1775 in the past, it's dope. It is such a good coffee. Such a good coffee. All right. What do we have time for? Not much. Okay. Let me just show you the 2022 House map, which really was supposed to be a complete wipeout, and it wasn't. It was still good, but the problem is a lead that, like the one we saw in 22 on the generic ballot, which we again were right about, nice try haters, would have resulted in 20, 25 seats in the, and actually if you're going to go just simply with a, let's say it was a map that was somewhere like fairly in between the 18 and 20 iterations with the post 22 iteration, right? You're looking at like a 20 seat, 20, maybe 25 seat gain. If you're talking about the map, prior, and we're just looking at like the 18 map as a baseline. Then you're talking maybe 30, 35 seats with that kind of a national advantage for Republicans. But of course, we know that did not happen. All right. And that happened. All right. Which was an epic disaster. And again, we can go to certain districts like, no, that was going to be a loser anyway. Where are you, Gibbs? There you are. We can go to districts like that. Gibbs got wrecked by, look at that margin. Absolutely huge. He got wrecked by that margin because of this is a sabotage. He ran a bad campaign. All right. And I'm not saying this, and I got to disclose this now, of course, because people are going to say something. I, of course, was John Gibbs' pollster during the primary. The team that took him through the primary was not the team that ran the general election. This is what the Republican Party does. They say, great job. However, you get no help from us unless you fire all those people and you bring in our shit people, which are the same people who've been losing elections for decades for the Republican Party. That is what happened. I did not begrudge him for it. I know the deal. I know how this goes. And when they say that, they mean no fundraising. You're not going to be able to get any donors. You're not going to be able to host any events. No one's going to give you venues. The door knocking teams are going to do what they did to David Gillio and knock for nobody or sit on their ass. And, like Adam Laxalt, maybe they'll be gambling in Caesar's Palace when they're supposed to be getting you votes. Like, that's what they do. They'll sabotage you. And it's true. And nobody talks about this stuff. And really, it's part, of course, this has a huge impact. And we tend to look at things at the macro level and the macro level alone. And that's not good enough. Especially when it drills down to these districts and you get a more granular, more micro look at each individual House race, you will see that oftentimes a lot of these things were not national. In Gibbs's case, he had all of it going against him. And the national issue of abortion was a major problem. Inflation should have been the biggest advantage that Republicans had. Instead of doing what we had outlined for Gibbs for his campaign, which was to discuss inflation in terms that Americans can understand. I mean, what do I know? 6 months of research to figure out how to talk to people about this stuff. What do I know? They wanted you to use the word inflation generically instead of, and some people did steal this idea as again, poor David knows, but Americans don't speak like that. They talk in terms of cost of living. All right. And so Gibbs threw all that out the window and he went with this very general message of inflation. He defended himself far too late from the accusations that he was basically, a 1660s pilgrim when it came to the issue of abortion, and he just got buried in his own prior statements and his silence because the NRCC told them all, not just Gibbs, but it hurt him a lot in his area. It told them all to not respond to the abortion attacks, to simply try to drown them out with the general message of inflation, which was never going to work. We watched, and because he would ask me to periodically look at the polls that were done by the or for the NRCC, which I know who the firms are. There's only a few of them, and they're shit. I'm sorry, and if you're listening, I don't think highly of your work. Your work sucks. All right, so you were measuring his strongly unfavorable rating from the mid 30s to 48, and you said nothing. No change in approach. Stay the course, you fucking morons. And he got cracked. He got clobbered. That's a perfect example of sabotage. By the way, Joe Miller, if you guys go back, they've been doing this a long time. It's just, picking and choosing their battles. In 22, they did it to basically every Trump candidate. And there's a reason why they did it. Because they knew Donald Trump was going to run again for president, and they wanted Ron DeSantis. Kevin McCarthy was running around talking with everybody. I mean, it's just true. Tom McClintock, come on, Tom, don't bullshit people. This plan was in place before the midterm elections to sabotage Trump's candidates so they can then go and argue to you, the voter, that Donald Trump should not be nominated because Donald Trump is toxic. Look at what happened to all his candidates. They all got destroyed because of the January 6th thing. If you want to win, we're going to have to go with somebody like Ron DeSantis. That was the strategy for years. They started cooking that shit up the moment his second impeachment trial started. Okay? All right. And I'm serious. They dreamed that they immediately knew that they were going to have to destroy MAGA in the midterms, and whoever they could not beat in primaries, like a Mike Cassidy, for instance, who they threw what did they throw at that guy? Almost $1 million in Mississippi 3 just to keep Mike Guest in the U.S. House. How's Mike Guest been performing for you guys? Sabotage was a huge factor in the underperformance of Republicans in the 2022 midterm elections. I know we're coming up now. It's almost over here. Remember, first and foremost, the realignment. Who leveraged the realignment better? That is how they defied history. Bad candidates was another one. All right. And we can say there were some bad MAGA candidates. Look at Illinois 11. That woman was a disaster. They should have just nominated Jerry to begin with. Sitting on tables with your legs, yeah, that's your campaign thing. I'm MAGA and I'm sexy. Yeah, that's going to work in suburban Illinois, where a woman who's in her 40s is going to look at you and go, this bitch, I'm not voting for her. She looks better than me. And she was an idiot. There was no reason to even vote for her. She got clapped. In a district, they didn't nearly win. They came close to winning several times in recent history. It's been trending Democrat, obviously. It's a tough lift, but there's never been any money put into that race. Why do I have that woman staring at me? Why do I have Jessica Tarlov as an advertisement? My God. And then the third reason, again, redistricting. Redistricting. And you must do something historic to overcome those reasons. Otherwise, you are dealing with this map. By the way, that's why I really, really applauded them with this Texas effort. You know what? I'm just taking 5 seats back. That's what I'm talking about. You got to do things like that. But you also needed to remember your downfalls looking at the 24 election, or your shortfalls. Shortfalls is a better word. and you needed to know right off the bat, then you were going to do way worse than Trump's approval would indicate, because there are so many voters who don't like you and like Donald Trump. And his approval rating right now is going to be a very tricky thing, because we see the education, or I hate using it, credentialed versus non-credentialed. Every time I try to remember it, I'll say it like that. But of course, I mean college, non-college. That dynamic helped Democrats stay in play in 22 and outperform, especially in the Senate. Trump used it to his advantage in 18 and was able to hold on to some of those, even though they could have done better. But they were able to hold on to some of those Senate seats in 18 that they should have lost, and in fact defeated Democratic incumbents like Joe Donnelly in Indiana. Trump leveraged the realignment. They're not doing any of that shit now. They're looking at those polls and they're going, look at how much better we're doing with college-educated voters. And only if we do better with the economy, we're going to be fine. No, you're not. Those voters are still voting for Democrats by 10 points, which is roughly what they voted for them for in the 22 elections and the 24 elections. It will not be enough. Got to get your voters out. Got to face reality. All right. I made a little pitch to you guys yesterday. I was like, busting your chops, and I popped the public polling project up there. And again, I have like debated whether or not to straight up call people and out and say, hey, thanks to you. There's a couple of reasons I'm going to do that. There's so many of you who pick anonymous. You're obviously doing it for a reason. So, I'm not going to do it for others because you chose anonymous. And then also sharing the public polling project is immensely helpful. Getting more people to know about it is going to increase the contributor base to it. So I have no way to acknowledge those people as well. So all I'm going to say is, obviously I made that pitch yesterday and you guys did it, and just keep it up. The thing is in the description below, just to show you what I meant. Like, there's been the last 3 of them have been a shortfall. I don't care. I'll kick out for it when it's close. You know me. But we're like, really under it for this entire quarter. So we have to go. We have to do quarters. We have to. We have to get one poll out specifically, at least for them, for this project, to go on RCP and just to keep with the schedule that all these aggregators have now gotten used to. And in fact, we had more than one for one that already wasn't funded. So, contribute what you can, share it far and wide. You can, guys, thank you for what you did, yesterday. That's a great start. 306. Oh my God. Locals. Let me do it right now. Oh my God. I forgot to do it for you. I'm sorry. I just saw that. And you're right. I didn't do it. I don't know why. I got distracted. That's why. All right. Let me put it up now. Here is the 1776 Law Center's fundraiser for the year, which I will be at in Chattanooga. I meant to put it. I told you guys I would put it up yesterday. I didn't. Man, I don't know if there's, based on what it raised already, I don't know if there's any more tickets. But see, I think there are. And if there are, we'll have a blast. It's going to be fun. Laura's like kind of pissed because she can't go. I really wanted her to go. And first of all, she's just great at these kind of events. She's just amazing. I actually was thinking of taking my daughter, but it's like maybe not the best venue. But my daughter's like getting into, she's going to be public figure. I can see it already. And she's got to learn this stuff, and I really wanted her to go, but unfortunately she's not able to. But the reason she's not able to is for a good reason. She was picked to do she was picked by a ballerina. This was a teacher, and Mary Helen, and this is awesome. I forgot to tell you this if you're listening. She was picked by this like guest ballerina instructor that they brought in to do a ballet solo at like what is effectively, guys, for you guys out there, and maybe there are women who are football fans, it's like the Super Bowl of ballet competitions. So like it's big. So she starts her choreography over the weekend. She can't come. I wish next I'm gonna start to bring my daughter to around with me so she can learn the world if she's gonna be in this kind of world. And she's young. But you know, she's gonna learn and learn early. That was one of the things my parents always did for me. No rose-colored glasses. This is how the world is. We're gonna have a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to it. All right. So if there are still more tickets, here it is. I'm sending it to you guys now. All right, locals, my bad. With apologies. I don't know how on God's green earth I forgot. All right. And I'll put it in the chat too right now. Because I don't know, was it you, Andrew? Somebody asked right on the show yesterday, and there it is. It's on locals if anybody else wants to go grab it. I did not put it for locals only. All right. All right, it's 3:10. I guess we'll cook and we'll get out of here. I was having a lot of fun today. Just don't forget the 3 things. So when you're listening to these stupid people, you know they're wrong. Do not listen to these people. They are not right. And it's going to be unfortunately ugly, you know? Yeah, so that's it. And Peppers, that's all right. I mean, if you've been, you know, obviously we appreciate what you've done in the past. There's obviously going to be a lot more stuff, you know, good stuff, bad stuff that, you know, comes in life, and sometimes you can help and sometimes you can't, and that's fine. That's just fine. I am always, if you show Peppers, send it to me and I'll do it. All right. I need someone. I Laura spends her time in the locals thing. That's why she spends her time in the locals when she can. She was in there yesterday and that was great. But maybe I'll tell her she's got to go back in there and do that for you guys. But I tend to not I'm not a blocker because I don't want to block debate. But if there's just somebody who's just acting in bad faith, let me know and I'll do it. I don't fix my eyes on the chat, because honestly, those people are kind of sad anyway. I don't know if this guy was bad faith or not, because Robert was moderating. I wasn't. But how many graphs did I just read out? Over an hour and almost 30 minutes before we even opened it up for conversation. And the guy's like, it's debatable or something? It's not debatable. We're just all wrong. Other pollsters exacerbate trends, especially when they think it helps Democrats with the narrative. So here's a good example. Trump has definitely lost support with younger voters, but he hasn't lost it by 54 points. And yet you'll have YouGov and Quinnipiac say, Trump slid 50 points with 18 to 29-year-olds. No, he didn't. Suck it, you know? No, he didn't. But it doesn't mean the trend isn't real. And that's what they do a lot of. They exacerbate trends, right? So while all of those polls may not be exactly what we would find, their trend is the same. Their trend is the same, all right? And it's real. Truth be told, there has never been this natural partnership between evangelicals and the nation or Zionism in general. That's just not true. And in fact, Americans, and we went back, guys, to the 40s, polling in the 40s, even at the height of the Holocaust, where people knew that was not there. Americans were much more sympathetic to the Palestinians. They couldn't stand the British for dumping the problem on us. And it was only when certain group of televangelists and Christian Zionists wanted to use it to benefit themselves that became a thing. That's just true. And you could support it and still acknowledge where it came from. Right? Maybe you still think it's right, and that's fine. That's totally, obviously, that is completely your right to do. But don't pretend like that's not the history. It is the history, especially with one in particular who got caught boinking somebody, and he needed to find another constituency to bankroll the coffers. That's what happened. All right. Even now, to this very day, one of the people who are running he's running the biggest effort in Gaza right now, the guy has absolutely zero history and zero qualifications on his resume to suggest that he is the right person to do it. What he is a Christian Zionist. And it's like a financial relationship. It's not, I mean, I don't know, guys, to make him maybe a little bit uncomfortable. All right. So no, not even early evangelicals in the United States felt that the Bible called them to defend Israel. Never happened. That is a fabrication of later Christian Zionists. All right. And people who back that cause, you know. All right. I know, no vaping, it's bad. No, vaping is bad. You know, I'm trying to quit vaping. I am. I'm doing pretty good. I'm actually doing much better than I've done in a while. Of course, I couldn't vape for the procedure on Monday. So I was this close. You know, I got my Zen back. I do need to go get some patches though. The patches did help. They helped. And we'll see. You know? It's better than sneaking it on plane. I'll sneak it in planes, guys. I'll sit there in my seat in the plane. Shouldn't tell anybody this, right? I'm going to end up on the list. I'll sit there in the seat on the plane like, hey, Laura, do me a favor. Look over there, because she'll yell at me. And I'll be like, in the corner. And she's like, this is ridiculous. You're going to get us banned from American Airlines. I will vape anywhere. The Lord knows my heart. I will vape in the pews, folks. I have done it, my pastor. So, oh, God, he's going to see this. I'm sure he's busted me. Sorry, pastor. Sorry. I will vape anywhere and everywhere. And frankly, it's just not right. And for the day that I didn't vape, my chest felt so much better. I was breathing so much better. Just true. True. Not as bad as I've always felt like vaping never blocked my chest as bad as smoking cigarettes did, even when I was much, much younger, because I haven't smoked cigarettes in years. But it doesn't mean it's good. And I'm constantly thirsty, and because it's drying out my mouth. So if it's drying out my mouth, where I got to constantly drink these Essentias, these big Essentias, and Smart Waters, and there's another one I really like. I'm forgetting the name, but you know, these like pH balanced waters. If I'm drinking like 4 of these a day because of this, then what in Sam hell is that doing to your esophagus and your lungs and everywhere else? It's not good. It can't be good, guys. It just can't be. All right. So I'm going to try. It's hard though. It's hard. It's no joke. It's hard. All right. With that in mind, it's 3:15. I'll get out of your hair now. But locals, it's up there. I got it. Don't forget the links to 1775 coffee is below in the description. So is the Public Polling Project. And like I said, do what you can, because we got to get out there again soon. I don't know. This is eventually I'm going to have to do a show soon on like what's the next Public Polling Project going to be about. But until we're ready to do it, we can't do it because this is the Trump administration and something new every day, right? There's something new every day. That's for sure. I will do a quick show tomorrow. I am taking a crazy early flight instead, so I can do a show on Friday. I don't know that tomorrow will be like a typical show, but I'm going to pop on to say hello. And Friday we'll do that show. After that show, I'm going to try to get my butt to sleep because I got to go sit in the airport for a couple hours. So I'm bug my family to get up at not even the crack of dawn. It's still dark. And then, yeah, I'll be back Sunday. I tried to make it so I wasn't gone as long as I originally thought I was going to be gone. And then the next trip is coming up very shortly. So like, I don't know. We'll just work it out as they come. All right. All right, guys. Yeah, I'm going to kick rocks, cueing the music. I'll see you guys soon. All right. Don't forget, if you like the videos, to like them, share them far and wide. Thanks for watching Inside the Numbers. All the best.